Get ready. Hello, welcome to The Conversation. Not just blacks and Jews in conversation.org. We have a special guest today, Alex Hamer. It's not that he forgot how to spell his name. That is how he spells his name. He's English. We allow anybody on this program, even the English. And having traveled to England myself many, many times for many years, I bring here, this is a barn manager. Now, having seen many barns in my day, and having rode horses myself, having been an equestrian at some time at Tufts University, and having graduated to the stallions from the mares, I would still not know that a barn manager is someone who manages stables and horses. And Alex has the exquisite position of doing so in Bedford, Westchester. And he comes courtesy of a previous guest, Lee Drexler, who was the appraiser, the president of the Association of Appraisals, as you may have remembered from previous shows, and she's crazy about this guy. And I'm not so crazy about the guy, because the first thing I found out from him was that he was sick. And we've never had a guest who was sick, because I'm a hypochondriac. And first thing I find out is a guy who looks this good can still be sick. And I'm going to introduce him to you right off the bat. Say hello.
Hello.
And first of all, what is your background from England?
Well, I came from Cheshire, in close to Manchester in England, and I came over here when I was 13, and I stayed 2 years, and then I left again and went back to Manchester, and then I came back here again after a year.
Do you still have family in England?
Yeah, I have both sets of grandparents and aunts, uncles, cousins. All my family are pretty much in England. Just my mom lives over here.
And what was your first attraction to the art of equestrian?
Pretty much when I was like around 3 and 4, I used to go and feed horses and stuff like that. And then I got into wanting to do horse riding, so I signed up for lessons and I started taking lessons. And then when I was 8, I started helping out at a local barn, and I just carried on from there and got more and more into it. I used to event and do competitions and things like that. And then I came over here and was helping out at a barn, and then I got a job at the same barn, and then got a management position.
For those of you not familiar with Bedford, there are very exquisite estates that go one after another. And I was informed that you have to have the comity of granting easements, that essentially a neighborhood association comprised of the various riders who own the various horses, whether or not they are stabled at the common stables, practice in the morning or wherever else of going together, riding the horses throughout everybody's backyard. And whether you wake up early, you go to work early or not, you generally, as a nice neighbor, allow everybody to come with their horse and just plow through your fields. Would you explain this kind of custom?
Well, it's the Bedford Riding Lanes Association, and it's based all in Bedford, and it's usually on the edges of people's properties and fields, and people are courteous as to what you do. If you own horses on the land, we walk by them and things like that, and it's an organization that's been run for a long time, and people want to maintain the trails. There's a lot of parties and events that go on involving the organization and things like that. It's a lot of fun.
Has anyone ever objected? For instance, let's say I become fortunate enough, I hit the lottery, and I am able to buy an estate in Bedford. And the first thing, I get a knock on the door, and you come over, and you say, you represent, how many, say 10 people, and I'm right in the middle, and I'm the connecting yard between the Bedford Riding Stable, whatever it is, and at 8 in the morning I should expect 12 horses plowing through, and I should have no objection. And there are many actors and actresses and producers and designers, and all, they're featured in magazines all about Bedford. And I don't want to be the type of person to ruffle these people. I'll never be able to buy a garment again. I won't be able to see a show. And everybody will be very grateful, and maybe I'll take up riding again. Now, suppose I say, no, thank you. What is the result?
Well, basically you just say no. I mean, we can't do anything about that. A lot of people set rules, and we stick to the rules. Some people want you just to walk across their lawns so you don't tear them up, and a lot of people want you to walk by the horses so the other horses don't get excited. And we stick to those rules and make sure we maintain them. And but if you say no, then we don't do it, and we try and find a trail somewhere else.
Now, has anyone said no?
Yeah, we get people that say no. People decide that they don't want you on the property. Someone may break the rules or something to that extent, and people say, okay, we're done, we want to close the trail, or that kind of thing happens often.
Now, you're young for such a prestigious post. Are you fully able to manage? How many horses do you have under you?
I have 18 horses, and yeah, I do it pretty much with ease. I enjoy doing it. I've done it for a long time now, so I like it a lot. And it's pretty much, as long as you get into a schedule and you're organized and you have everyone doing what they're supposed to do and you keep on top of everything, there's no reason why it should be a difficult task.
I don't know too many people who dislike horses. It's the kind of animal that just has gravitated to mankind. They've made movies about the United States Army trying to round up the last wild stallions and mares, and there was a very sympathetic reaction in the audience. And you had people bringing them into Canada, save them from being wiped out by the cavalry. And you had the horse being brought over here. I believe it's not a native animal to North America. Am I correct?
No, it's not a native animal to North America, but there's a lot of horses that originate from like the western part of America. For example, quarter horses and paint horses are American breeds. A lot of horses are shipped over now, warm bloods from Europe, and like thoroughbreds originated from England, and they've become a popular breed in this country just because of their ability to jump. And a lot of people on the East Coast want to jump and do things like eventing and stuff, so they brought horses in to be able to do that kind of thing. Quarter horses and paints aren't really built for that, and that's pretty much why horses didn't originate from this area. It was mostly from out west. Quarter horses can go for a really long period of time, and the cowboys ride them, and that's a lot of people still enjoy doing that. And the trail riding system is pretty much a lot of quarter horses on it, just because people want to go for a long time and ride quarter horses. But also on the East Coast, a lot of people move down to Florida in the winter months so they can carry on with the eventing and stuff, because weather conditions up here are just not good enough.
Now, you're I believe, under 20. How many are under 20 that are interested in riding? Is this a sport that the young like, the middle-aged, the old, all ages equally, women and men equally, all backgrounds equally, or is it the sport of the aristocrat? Is it the sport of the fox hunter, of the English with the hounds, and so on and so forth? Where does it play itself out in America today?
Well, it's really considered an all-round sport. A lot of people, do a lot of different things. Like you said, fox hunting is completely different to eventing, which is completely different to polo, which is completely different to driving. And people just, horses suit a lot of different people's wants and needs, and that's why it's such a popular sport. It's really a lot of women involved with the horses, but, men are also heavily involved, and probably in a lot of male eventers. There's a lot of male eventers and riders and stuff. So it's all around pretty much an equal sport.
If I can manage it, we're going to have another guest come on in about 10 minutes. A friend of yours, Ava Marks, who's written all kinds of wonderful literature of Bedford, of a sexual nature. Now, I'm not about to get into that subject with you. She's much older. And, of course, the horse, we can think of all kinds of sexual innuendos. There's Equus that has played Broadway and been in the movies with every famous actor you can imagine. I must have seen it 3 times before I understood that play. I like horses, and I like them simply for riding. And it makes you once you know how to ride a horse as a man, it makes you very comfortable. It takes a while to learn it. Women ride it side saddle. Now, why do women have to ride a horse side saddle, or is that something just old-fashioned and old style?
Well, it is an old-fashioned and old-style way of riding, but a lot of women just ride regularly, in an English saddle. Side saddle is something that, was way a lot of people used to ride, and they found it, a lot of people ride like that. I know one lady who rides in the hunt sometimes side saddle, and she flies over jumps and stuff like that, and people look at it like, oh, wow, like, how could you ever do that? But, I guess if people are accustomed to it, then it's fine. A lot of women, though, do ride just in a normal English saddle or even a Western saddle. It's not unusual for that to occur.
Has this become a big business in America? I know that when we conquered the West, so to speak, when we despoiled the plains, shot up the buffalo intentionally to starve the Indians, tried to wipe out half the species, thinking that they were pests like the wolves, and then, of course, the deer multiplied, and then we said, well, we can now shoot the deer because look how they're multiplying, and we, of course, didn't take credit for the fact we put the whole ecosystem out of balance. Has now the sport of riding or the pleasure of being with the exquisite nature of horses become popular in general American society, or, as I asked before, is it something that only those with property and money can really afford to do?
Well, around Bedford area, a lot of people have that property and money to spend on riding, and so riding around there is a lot more expensive. As I grew up in England, where in that part of England there wasn't a lot of money, and I mean, riding was just it was a very inexpensive thing to do, and pretty much anyone could go for a lesson once a week or anything like that. And it was inexpensive. Over here, it's a lot more expensive, but most of my clientele, have the money to be able to do that because Bedford is an expensive place to live. So that's just the way it is, and I kind of figured that out when I came over here. I mean, it was a big transition to know that, like, how much even boarding expenses were for the horses, how much hay, feed costs, all of that kind of thing is really a lot different to what you would pay in England. I mean, it's expensive.
Are you familiar with the tragedies of horses in Manhattan? These horses who have been used for carriages, and they've been ridden in the heat until they literally collapsed on the road, and despite the many laws for their protection, or the horses that would line up opposite the Plaza Hotel. Now we no longer have the Plaza Hotel, and you have people in the place of horses in these strange contraptions who are pulling these carriages that horses used to pull. And I'm much happier with seeing people pulling it instead of the horses. But everybody used to tell me that they're treated humanely, and they're fed, and they're watered, and don't you want to go for a carriage ride in the park? Well, what do you think of the carriage ride in the park, of horses in Manhattan? Not the police horses, of course. Those are for demonstrations and for order, and I know police care for horses the way they care for their dogs, like in war, animals were used in war too. I object to that, but it's maybe necessary, but they're cared for properly. What do you think of the horses in a big city?
Well, it's not really something that I'm accustomed to. I've never really taken a carriage ride in Manhattan, but I have heard, that they go around Central Park and things like that. I don't know whether they go all over the city, or I'm not sure, but if the horse is, used to that environment, then it's used to that environment. I mean, it would be nice to see the horses out and, big open field and doing what they want to do, but, a lot of event horses even are just, they stay in their stalls all the time. They get turned out for 20 minutes a day and come back in, and that's about it, and then they're ridden in a small ring. So you could look at that in kind of a similar way. I mean, pulling a carriage, yeah, it's you know, a bigger trauma to the horse. And I mean, I didn't know of one collapsing in the street or anything like that, but I'm sure it happens. Just as, you know, a horse on the racetrack falls over and breaks its leg, you know, it could happen any time. They're fragile.
What about the horses in the circus? What about the protests by many? If you haven't guessed, I'm a person strong for animal rights. What about the horses in the circus? I've gone to circuses all my life. Well, I get the permit for the demonstrators outside the circus. I go in the VIP seats, and I enjoy the circus. But I believe these people love their horses. I know there's been many complaints about mistreatment of elephants, mistreatment of lions and gorillas, but a horse is something different. When you see somebody with the dogs and with the horses, I like to think they care for them as well as you do in Bedford. Am I right or naive?
Again, I'm not really familiar with the circus, but it's, you know, I'm sure they treat them properly. I mean, it's probably a tough life, you know, traveling around all over the place and, wherever they go in trucks of lions, and I guess they're trained to, you know, be able to stand on their backs and do acts on them. So if that's what they're trained to do, they're probably accustomed to that.
What are your accomplishments in riding? You entered contests. Do you go for that kind of activity? I would be the last one to ever want to jump a post or something. And what are your aspirations for the future?
Well, I used to do a lot of eventing. I used to do 3-day eventing in England, which was a lot of fun. It was kind of tiring. It got to a point where I'd just be getting up really early in the morning, and I did it for a couple of years, and then I decided that I just wanted to go, you know, and not do that anymore. And that was around about the same time as I moved over here, and I started running, you know, a trail riding lesson barn in Bedford. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, just, you know, trail riding. We do hunter pace competitions, which are like timed events, which someone in the morning sets the time at the pace, and you have to judge the terrain, according, like, basically. And that's what, you know, I do a lot of that now. A lot of people from my barn do that, and again, that's another thing associated with the BRLA. They do a lot of hunter paces, and and a lot of other places are doing them as well.
And what message would you give for our audience, for those interested in horses and riding?
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's a really great sport. It's relaxing. You know, it can be challenging. You know, you can really make it however you want to make it. Obviously, it's a high-risk sport because you're riding an animal that, you know, I can say this animal's really well trained. It would never do anything, but, you know, you never know what might happen. A branch could fall on the horse and, you know, it could spook or something like that. And that's just something that people have to realize, that, you know, a lot of people go out on a ride or, you know, or even in an outdoor arena, something can always happen. And they're unpredictable. It's not like driving a car. Really, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun, and it's a great thing to do, and a lot of people love doing it. And yeah, it's dangerous to a certain degree, but it's something that a lot of people really like doing, and I really like it too.
I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's your suggestion now that I switch to the celebrity we have with us, and it's a great surprise, and I'm going to see if we can have the two of you switch mics at this moment. And if it doesn't work out, don't blame me. This is Bedford at work here. We're going to see if Bedford people know how to switch mics, and you can hand it over to Eva Marx. And I'm going to give you a little taste of Eva Marx. Is the author of 6 books, and the latest one is Flat Speak.
Okay. I have to spin back. Oh, spin. Flirt Speak. Oh, Alex, how do you make this chair hold still? Okay.
I'm entitled with all that I have going on here. I'm entitled to a little joke. Our first book, View from the Porch. I could have said something about that one too, but I just kept my nose going. Tales from the Anti-Hamptons. Oh, you got me on board with that one. That's the last place I like to be, the Anti-Hamptons. Takes place in Bedford. He's recipient of the prestigious Washington Irving Book Award, and I'm very familiar with that. Congratulations again. I've been all over Westchester, Newark, and Irving House, of course, there where Ichabod Crane was written into legend.
The Headless Horseman.
I like to think of it as Ichabod Crane. He's your headless horseman, or portrayed by Johnny Depp on. And in the magazine I had mentioned, which is Bedford.
Why don't you hold it up?
No, it's enough. She's already giving me advice. You see the difference? You see the difference between the first guest and the second? Now I'm getting advice. The Carmel Snow, the editor of Harper's Bazaar, was interviewed by her. I, of course, haven't gotten her on this show.
No, she's dead.
So she's dead. Well, hopefully we're not going to get a dead person on this show. All right. Let's see how you sound.
Okay. How do I sound?
Good.
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 So, welcome.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Say hello.
Hi.
Tell us about the current book.
I have a book coming out in November called Flirt Speak, the Sexy Language of Flirtation.
Sit up higher.
It's a follow-up to Read My Hips, which was a body language book about flirtation.
And how do you know Alex?
I know Alex because 2 years ago I decided I wanted to learn how to ride. I'd moved to Bedford almost 20 years ago, and I would see these people on these gorgeous horses on the dirt roads, and I would be driving by and I would think, I really want to do that. So finally 2 years ago I decided I would, and Alex's barn is one of the few places that you can take lessons and not own a horse. And he taught me how to ride, and actually 2 days ago we got a second place in a big contest. So he taught me how to ride pretty well.
You would encourage others to learn riding regardless of age, or is age a factor regardless of sex, or is that a factor, and regardless of handicap, or is that a factor?
Well, there are handicapped people that do ride horses. There's an organization called Pegasus, which caters to special needs people, mostly children, who ride horses. There's a lot of equine assisted therapy, but I'm not really qualified to talk about that. I would say if you have a love of the outdoors and a love of animals and you're pretty fearless, it's a great thing to take up.
Now, I had mentioned the play Equus. I also just saw the play The History Boys. And The History Boys comes from England, as did Equus. Now, what is the fascination in England with horses, except that they have a lot of flat, hilly ground, and they like to terrorize little animals that do nobody any harm, such as foxes? What is the fascination there with the horses? Because, of course, we have horses here from the Spanish. The Spanish were essentially responsible, and the Austrians have their special riding school with the Lepanza stallions. They have a very different type of military style of riding and we have the Clydesdale tradition from Germany with the big hairy hooves, and they carry their heavy milk well. You know, Germans are big. You know, these are very different types of horses. With the Spanish are very stylish, and the Germans are very big, and the English, they go out and they ride, and all the mysteries. There's always somebody riding a horse to catch something. What happened in England that they gravitated to the horses for this purpose?
Well, I don't think it's the horses that catch the things. In a traditional hunt, it's the dogs that do the catching of the fox. It's the horses that are running behind the dogs. I think it's a love of the outdoors. That's probably the main thing. It gets you out in any weather. You can ride in the rain. You can ride in the snow. I like to ride in the winter. I think it's if you didn't want to take up skiing or some other kind of outdoor sport, horseback riding gets you outdoors.
Now, I don't want to be a prude, but you mentioned the art of flirtation and sexy language and so on and so forth. We look at the History Boys, and history was my love, was history. And we look at the Equus.
Well,
Why are
Equus
they?
was
Well,
a sexual
well, so is the History Boys.
I
They
didn't
ruin
see that.
everything with history, with the sex. They have a beautiful course in history in that play, and they bring in sex for no reason whatsoever. Why the fascination there with bringing sex in? Is it because of horses and Equus? Is this horse seen as a sexual object?
When women I can only speak for women, when you have 1,200 pounds of power between your legs, that's pretty sexy. That's what riding a horse is partly about. It's also about power.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said it, not me. But they can't come after me for any kind of these statements. Now,
Right.
tell me about the anti-Hamptons. If anybody's anti-Hamptons, here I am.
Well, Bedford is the anti-Hamptons. Although it's getting more and more Hampton-like, that's really why the book is called The Anti-Hamptons, because Bedford is the antithesis of the beach.
What does the Hampton have that Bedford doesn't, and what does Bedford have that the Hampton does not?
Well, now they have a lot of things that are similar. I think that the Hamptons was always more flash, and now Bedford is getting flashier all the time.
Bedford is right next to Greenwich. Do you see a lot of people from Greenwich riding with you? Are they sharing that kind of love, or they stick on the beach?
No, there actually is a lot of cross-pollinization between Greenwich riders and Bedford riders, and I believe this weekend is a pace in Greenwich that many people in Bedford will be participating in.
Tell me about how you started riding.
I really didn't know how to do anything
Writing a
else.
book. Writing a book.
Writing a book. I was a newspaper columnist and still am for many years, and my first book is really a compilation of my columns about life in Bedford.
And would you tell us where we might read you on a more regular basis?
Well, if you're a subscriber, that would be hard in New York City. Most of the papers that I write for are Westchester-based.
Oh, we get to Westchester every once in a while. I will
You do?
certainly will
right.
look you up.
Westchester County Times, many commuters read that. I have a regular column in that paper called All About Eve. And I write for the Bedford Record Review, where I have a column called View from the Porch. And I also write for Bedford Magazine.
And you're always welcome on this show. And one day I may just show up there to take a little ride myself. You know, I used to be pretty good because I spent my whole college learning how to ride. And do you find, as we close the program, and I want to thank you both, do you find that riding is a peaceful occupation or is it stressful?
Both. I think that there's a kind of a pleasant stress associated with it. Maybe you would call that nervous anticipation, because you never really know, as Alex said, you never really know what is going to happen on a ride. But essentially, it's peaceful.
We, of course, have had tragedies, as everybody knows, the most famous case with Superman,
Right.
but they should have stuck to the ground, and then his poor wife just passed away, and children remain. And somehow or other, I don't think that has had a negative effect with horses. Am I right?
Well, I would say that when I took up riding, almost every single person I knew brought up the Christopher Reeve incident. And the first time that I was having a jumping lesson and the horse refused the jump and I was up over its ears, I thought, oh, this is what happened to Chris Reeve. But I don't think you can really let that kind of thing hold you back, because accidents happen all the time.
Thank you.